Rain tapped softly against the sleek glass windows of the downtown office tower as David Carson loosened his tie and checked his reflection in the mirror behind his desk. 52, still handsome in a weathered, confident way. The kind of man who carried authority in his voice and arrogance in his stride. He had built a reputation as a decisive, powerful investor, and in his mind, that power extended to every corner of his life. He glanced at his watch. Almost 6. Perfect timing. He sent a quick message. Room is ready. Meet me downstairs in 15. Lena's reply came within seconds, the kind of eager tone that made him feel younger. Can't wait. I packed the red dress you like. He smiled to himself, pocketed his phone, and locked his office drawer where he kept the small velvet box. Not an engagement ring, but diamond earrings worth enough to make an apology sparkle. Guilt was something he rarely indulged, but Clara had been distant for months, always buried in meetings, strategy reports, and merger calls. He told himself their marriage was already half over, that what he was doing wasn't betrayal, just escape. The elevator doors opened to the marble lobby. Lena waited near the revolving doors, wrapped in a beige trench coat, her hair still damp from the drizzle. Young, graceful, and undeniably aware of the stares she drew. She smiled when she saw him, that smile that made him forget his own rules. Did you check in? He asked, handing his car keys to the valet. Just now, she said, slipping her arm around his. The suite looks amazing, David. You really know how to spoil a girl. He grinned, proud of the effect. Only the best. 5 stars, private balcony, skyline view. You deserve a weekend with no worries. They stepped through the golden-lit lobby of the St. Mirabel Hotel, the newest jewel of the city, freshly renovated after being bought by a mysterious new investor. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above imported marble floors. A pianist played something soft and romantic near the bar, and the scent of white orchids floated through the air. David admired the surroundings as though the place were an extension of himself. Power recognized power. You see, this is what life should feel like, he murmured. No stress, no responsibilities, just luxury. Lena laughed, tilting her head toward him. You say that like you're trapped in some sad little prison. He gave a short chuckle. Marriage can feel like that sometimes. The words came out more bitterly than he intended. But Lena just smiled, pretending not to notice. She'd learned not to pry, not about his wife, not about business. She was clever that way. At the reception desk, the concierge greeted him with the kind of polished politeness reserved for VIPs. Mr. Carson, welcome back to the St. Mirabel. Your suite has been prepared as requested. The manager asked me to extend a personal welcome on behalf of the new ownership. David raised an eyebrow. New ownership, already? Yes, sir. The transfer was finalized this week. The new chairwoman will be taking over operations personally. There's some sort of board gathering tomorrow evening. Well, David said smoothly, signing the register. Please send my compliments to her when she arrives. I'm sure she'll find the hotel in excellent shape. The concierge smiled, unaware of the irony. I believe she already does, sir. As they walked toward the elevator, Lena tugged his hand playfully. Chairwoman, huh, I bet she's some cold, rich widow in pearls. Probably, David said, smirking as the elevator doors slid shut. Who else would have the money and patience to run a place like this? The mirrored walls reflected their closeness, his hand on her waist, her laughter echoing softly as the elevator ascended. Neither of them noticed the faint reflection of a familiar woman stepping through the lobby doors below, her heels clicking sharply against marble, her expression calm, composed, and unreadable. The elevator glided to a stop with a soft chime. When the doors opened, they were met by a corridor carpeted in cream and gold, the kind of quiet that only existed in expensive places. Lena's heels sank into the plush floor as they walked toward the penthouse suite. Every step seemed to hum with indulgence, subtle lights glowing from the wall panels, the scent of polished wood and fresh lilies lingering in the air. David slid the keycard into the reader, and the door opened with a muted click. The suite spread out before them like a private kingdom. Wide glass windows overlooking the city skyline, a fireplace already lit with soft flames, a chilled bottle of champagne resting in an ice bucket beside a silver fruit tray. Everything about the space whispered discretion, wealth, and control. Lena's face lit up. She dropped her coat on the armchair and walked straight to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. God, look at that view, she said. You can see everything from up here. David loosened his cufflinks and watched her with quiet satisfaction. That's the point, he said. No one can see you. She turned, smiling over her shoulder, hair catching the golden light from the fire. That sounds almost dangerous. Only if you like danger, he said, crossing the room to her. They kissed, the city glowing beneath them like a bed of jewels. For a while, the world narrowed to the rustle of fabric, the clink of glasses, the easy rhythm of laughter. David poured champagne into 2 flutes and handed her one. To new beginnings, he said. She arched an eyebrow. Are we starting something new? He hesitated, just a fraction. Maybe, if we want to. The words hung between them, fragile, almost believable. Lena wanted to believe them, wanted to think she was more than an indulgence in a hotel room. She moved closer, resting her head against his chest. You're always so tense, she murmured. Even when you're here, it's like part of you's still at work. David smiled faintly, staring out at the skyline. That's the curse of responsibility, he said. You never really turn it off. You should try, she whispered. He didn't answer. The firelight flickered against his face, carving lines that hadn't been there years ago. He thought of Clara, her calm intelligence, the way she used to challenge him in board meetings, the way she had grown distant but never weak. A small part of him still respected her for it. Another part resented her completely. The sound of his phone buzzing on the table snapped him back. He frowned, picked it up, and saw a notification from his assistant. Reminder, Mirabelle Group acquisition finalized today. Chairwoman announcement tomorrow. He turned the screen face down. Work, he muttered. Always work. Lena watched him carefully. You could turn it off, she said softly. Just for tonight. He nodded, more to please her than out of conviction. You're right, tonight's ours. She smiled, slipping her arms around him again. Good, because I brought something special. He laughed. Should I be nervous? Maybe, she teased, vanishing into the bedroom. David exhaled, poured himself another glass of champagne, and let his mind drift. He imagined the coming week, closing deals, flying to Geneva, maybe even convincing Clara to sign the new property contracts without too much resistance. She'd always trusted his judgment, even when they no longer shared affection. He didn't hear the quiet knock at the door. A bellhop stepped in discreetly, setting down a silver tray. Compliments of management, sir. The new chairwoman wanted all VIP guests to enjoy a signature dessert tonight. David nodded, distracted. Tell her thank you. When the door closed, he lifted the small envelope beside the tray. Inside, written in elegant handwriting, were 5 words. Welcome home, Mr. Carson. He stared at it for a moment, confused. The handwriting was oddly familiar, poised, deliberate, unmistakably feminine. Lena's voice drifted from the bedroom. David, who's that from? He slipped the note into his pocket before she could see. No one, he said quietly. Just a welcome card. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, and the rain began again, soft, steady, and full of warning. By the next evening, the rain had cleared, leaving the city washed clean and shining beneath a violet sky. The St. Mirabelle Hotel had transformed from a quiet sanctuary into a stage for power. The grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers, gold-trimmed mirrors, and the hum of polite laughter. Waiters glided between clusters of guests, carrying trays of champagne and truffle canapes. A small orchestra played something elegant, the kind of music that made people stand a little straighter and smile a little wider. David adjusted his tie, glancing at his reflection in a mirrored column. He looked the part. Navy suit, pocket square folded perfectly, the expression of a man who belonged wherever he stood. Lena appeared beside him in a midnight blue gown that shimmered with every step. Her hair was swept up, her eyes bright with the thrill of being seen. Do you think anyone will recognize you? She asked, her voice low. Not a chance, he said with an easy smile. This crowd's full of executives and investors. They're too busy chasing their own fortunes to care about me. She slipped her arm through his. Still, I can't believe we're here. You said this dinner was invite only. It is, David said, glancing around. I made sure we were on the guest list. After all, I've done enough business with this chain to count as family. A waiter offered them glasses of champagne, and David accepted one. The bubbles rose and burst like tiny, fleeting promises. Across the room, clusters of board members and reporters whispered excitedly about the new ownership. He caught fragments of conversation. Female chairwoman, unexpected acquisition, former executive from abroad. He smirked. New money. Probably inherited the fortune and wanted to play tycoon. Lena smiled, not really listening. Her eyes were drawn to the center of the room, where a stage had been set beneath a velvet curtain. A hotel manager tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate a new chapter in the Mirabelle legacy. Please welcome our esteemed board members and our new chairwoman, whose vision and leadership will guide this company into a remarkable future. Applause filled the room. David clapped politely, still sipping his drink. He expected another aging magnate, maybe some heiress with a trained smile. But when the curtain drew back, his body went cold. Standing beneath the chandelier, poised in a black gown with diamond earrings that caught the light, was Clara. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. The champagne flute trembled slightly in his hand. Lena leaned closer, whispering, she's beautiful. She looks so familiar. David cut her off with a whisper that barely escaped his lips. That's my wife. The applause swelled again, but the sound was distant, muffled by the rush of blood in his ears. Clara's expression was serene, too serene. She looked confident, radiant, untouchable. Her gaze swept the room slowly, acknowledging the crowd with a gracious smile. But when her eyes met David's, the smile hardened, and for the briefest second, something sharp and knowing flickered in her look. Ladies and gentlemen, Clara began, her voice calm and clear through the speakers, it is my honor to stand before you as the new chairwoman of St. Mirabelle Holdings. This company has always represented excellence and integrity, values I intend to restore and protect. David could feel his pulse in his throat. Lena, oblivious to the tension, leaned closer. You didn't tell me your wife was. Don't, he muttered, setting his glass down before it could shatter in his hand. Clara continued, her speech weaving effortlessly between grace and quiet power. She spoke of renewal, responsibility, and trust, every word landing like a blade carefully aimed. Finally, she smiled once more. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge one of our most loyal patrons in attendance tonight. A man whose dedication to this establishment has been truly memorable. Mr. David Carson. Every head turned. Cameras flashed. Lena's fingers went cold against his arm. David forced a smile, but inside, something broke. The certainty, the control, the illusion that his worlds would never collide. Clara lifted her glass, her eyes never leaving his. Welcome home, darling. The room erupted in polite applause, but beneath the chandelier's glow, it felt like judgment. The applause lingered like static in the air, soft and cruel. David forced himself to stand still, his smile frozen in place while Clara's eyes held his, calm, sharp, merciless. The orchestra struck up a polite melody, and conversation resumed in fractured whispers around the room. He could feel them looking, their curiosity disguised behind champagne flutes and polite laughter. Lena's hand was trembling where it clutched his arm. David, she whispered urgently, what is this? What's happening? He didn't answer. He couldn't. The walls of the ballroom felt smaller, the air too thick to breathe. Clara had already stepped down from the stage, surrounded by executives offering congratulations and cameras snapping in bursts of white light. She was immaculate, her posture perfect, her smile precise, every movement deliberate. David tried to collect himself. We're leaving, he muttered, turning toward the door. But before he could take a step, a hotel manager appeared, smiling tightly. Mr. Carson, Mrs. Carson has requested that you join her in the private lounge. She said she'd like to speak with you. It wasn't a request, it was a summons. Lena stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. She knows, doesn't she? He gave a short, bitter laugh. Oh, she knows everything. They followed the manager down a long corridor, the noise of the ballroom fading behind them. The lounge was quiet, bathed in golden lamplight and the scent of jasmine. Clara stood by the window, looking out over the city. She didn't turn as they entered. Clara, David began, his voice cautious. I didn't know you were. Chairwoman, she finished smoothly, still facing the window. No, I imagine you didn't. You were always too busy booking hotel rooms under your name. Lena flinched, color draining from her face. Mrs. Carson, Clara finally turned, her expression composed but her eyes blazing with something raw. Disappointment, fury, heartbreak all hidden beneath control. Miss, she said politely, I don't believe introductions are necessary. You've already made quite an impression. David stepped forward. Clara, don't do this here. Here, she laughed softly, almost pitying. David, you did this here. You brought your mistress into my hotel. Into the suite I approved for renovation. You've always had terrible timing. He tried to meet her gaze, but it felt like standing before a judge. It's not what you think, he said weakly. Clara's voice cooled. Please, spare me the clichés. I've read the receipts, seen the bookings, and spoken to staff. You were sloppy. You always are when you think no one's watching. Lena took a step back, whispering, I didn't know she. Clara cut her off with a raised hand. You don't owe me explanations, dear. He does. The silence that followed was unbearable. The city lights flickered across the windows, painting shifting patterns across Clara's face. She moved to the small table where a folder waited, thick with documents. You'll find the divorce papers inside, she said evenly. Already reviewed, already signed. I'll be retaining the company shares in the estate. You can keep the car. And your pride, if you still have any. David's throat tightened. You've been planning this. Planning. Clara tilted her head slightly. Let's call it preparation. When trust disappears, you prepare for storms. Lena swallowed hard. Maybe I should go. Clara nodded. Yes, do. Lena hesitated, glanced at David, then hurried out without another word. The door clicked shut, leaving the two of them in the muted glow of the city. Clara took a slow breath. I don't hate you, David. I stopped giving you that much power a long time ago. But I do pity you. You had everything, respect, family, stability, and you traded it for secrecy and cheap admiration. He stepped closer, desperate now. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, she said, her voice steady, almost gentle. You just thought I'd never find out. For the first time, he saw not just the woman he'd betrayed but the strategist, the one who had built, watched, waited, and struck when the moment was perfect. Clara walked past him toward the door. Enjoy the suite, she said quietly. It'll be the last room you ever book on my account. And then she was gone, her heels clicking sharply against the marble, each step echoing like a closing chapter. David stood alone, surrounded by the silence of luxury. Outside, the city lights blurred through the rain, and in the reflection of the glass, he saw himself for what he was, a man who mistook control for strength, and only realized too late that he'd lost both.